There we go.
Okay. And we are live.
Good. Good morning, everything's good? All right, well, welcome everybody to the meeting for tonight. This is the Wildwood Planning and Parks meeting for Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. Thanks all for attending, and can we get a roll call, Ms. Rivetow, please?
Chair Galani,
Here?
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Crayons, Councilmember Rambo,
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry,
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg. I see him.
You may still have trouble getting in, so.
I'm muted.
Yeah. Well, we have a quorum.
Okay. Good? Or should we wait? Oh. Okay, so then, we're good? So the first,
Ask Mr. Ottenberg.
Scott, can you unmute yourself if you can hear us?
Mr. Mabry has his hand up.
Oh, Councilmember Mabry?
Just making sure that the audio here is working.
It's
We can
working.
hear you.
It can be a challenge. Scott's staying at a different hotel. It did take a tiny bit of time to get configured.
Oh, I gotcha. Well, we have a quorum, so we can move forward and then he can participate. He would have to turn his camera on to vote anyway. There he is.
So you just had to restart.
All right, can you hear me now?
We
We can hear
can.
you, and we were just taking quorum. So shall I mark you
All
as,
right, perfect. Thank you. Sorry about the delay.
Oh,
thank you.
all good, sir. All right, that takes us to the first item here, which is the approval of the minutes from the committee's meeting of Monday, August 19th, 2024. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Councilmember?
Second.
Councilmember. And all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Thank you.
All right, so we had Councilmember Preston is who made the motion and Councilmember Dodwell second.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public participation for tonight?
If anyone that's currently joining us in the meeting would like to speak during public participation, please raise your hand with the use your raise the hand feature, and we'll promote you to a panelist. Nope, it does not appear we have any.
Okay, that takes us to action items. And what we were looking to do is make a couple of amendments to the agenda here for tonight relating both under park matters and we had two items. We have a presentation of the design plan for all-inclusive unlimited play facility at Village Green. So the two things I would ask is that, number one, if we could move this up to the first item of the night, so we can have these folks that are here tonight be able to make their presentation and not sit through the rest of our meeting, if they so choose. And then the second item, which is number two under Parks Matters, was the audit that was gonna be completed by a limited play of the current facilities. And that is in process, but it hasn't been fully completed yet, so we'd like to postpone that until we've got the fully performed audit and they can come present that to us at a later date. So I guess I would look for a motion to postpone the audit presentation and then to move the other presentation for Village Green to the first item of the night.
I'll make some motion.
Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Preston. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, well, we are good then. So we will cancel number two under parks. And now we will have the presentation from the folks from Unlimited Play.
Okay. Am I still a panelist?
Yes, you
Can I
are still a
see it?
panelist. You can share screen. Did you want to give an introduction?
Mr. Chair, just a couple of points before Ms. McKay
For sure.
even starts. Obviously, we all are aware of the particular project we're discussing. I've kind of coined it more recently as phase 2 of Village Green. For all intents and purposes, we saw, for the most part, kind of a rough discussion of this at one of our earlier meetings. The team from Unlimited Play has been working very hard over the last few weeks to gain an understanding of some of the more difficult issues relating to stormwater management, the addition of a restroom facility and sanitary sewers along with that. So they've done a yeoman's job getting us to this point. And tonight, I think for all intents and purposes, we're seeing it for the first time. And I'll turn it over to you.
Very true.
Awesome.
So I think all of you received what you see up on the screen and on your computer in your packet, which is the big overall design. I want you to know what you ask us to do at Glencoe Park is significantly different than this park. I'm sure you're all aware of that. Also, at least in my opinion, how grand this park should be versus Glencoe Park a little bit too. This is your premier city destination park that you're building, correct? You'll see that both in the design and the budget numbers. With that, we have made sure to include everything Unlimited Play believes in that I explained to you last time. Ramping all the way to the top of the structure, climbing, spinning, activities for 2 to 5 and 5 to 12-year-olds. Just pretty pictures, but I'm going to get to the playground design for you. So here now you'll see your 5 to 12 structure. We're using the grade of your site, which we often like to do. So you'll see some hill slides along the grade there. We talked previously in a meeting about maybe cutting costs down by not having poured in place on the side of the hill, putting grass there, which in my mind made a legitimate, could be a legitimate thing to do. Both our landscape architect and playground designer have assured us that by the time we build a retaining wall to hold up that hill, and then add grass and the irrigation needed to do that, it's going to be a wash with our cost. So right now we're leaving it poured in place, especially as we talk to some different designers that have seen grass on a hill like this. Kids run up it and they said it just turns into a big mud mess that you're not going to like in the long run. So just to address that. And then there are pieces within this, and you'll see double spinners on both sides. There's a few things like that we can always cut back. And you'll see some of that. We're showing you 3 designs tonight. And this is the premier design. And then we'll take you from there. This piece on the 5 to 12, you'll see the roller slide for kids with cochlear implants. The surfacing design we do intentionally for kids with visual. Gosh, I am not working tonight well with visual issues. So the tan around each of the spinners allows somebody to say, hey, something's changing here, slow down and figure out what's going on. And then up at the top, you see the 2 to 5 structure. To fit with Wildwood, you see a beautiful custom tree that creates a lot of imagination and theme, along with the butterflies and the flowers. The net right beside the ramping allows kids to continually challenge themselves with different skills, while individuals with mobility impairments are right on that ramp. A better picture of the 2 to 5 swing set, and then a seesaw, essentially, that has a back on one side, so kids that need more support can sit on there, along with one of the spinners. You also see that walkway that goes all the way around. It's been really intentionally designed for your project. It both adds access to the top of the structures and gives a wayfinding path for kids, especially with autism, to be able to step out on that path and decide when they want to re-enter. Quiet Grove right there, designed again for kids with autism. You'll see your theme continue with the mushrooms and the trees. a net in the middle there for a gathering spot and a little more challenging activities. So before we go to the next slide, this project, including a restroom on site, all of the construction, we are at $2,590,000 on this one. We were trying so hard not to be at that number. By the time our landscape architect calls MSD, which I think you're painfully aware of, regulations for MSD right now, that upped our costs. And as we were designing the restroom, we didn't wrap in originally, so that's elevated our costs quite a bit for this one. So your next option would be scaling down the 2 to 5 section. So if you see, we still have a structure there. It's just one ramp and one deck instead of the 3 decks that you saw earlier. A silly tree, which I'll show you a picture of, musical instruments, and just a few items going on there. But you still see the 5 to 12 larger section with a lot of the spinning, climbing, all of that going on at the top. So here's some of the things. So the structure, if you can picture that smaller structure, would be down to something like that. The silly tree is one of my favorite things for toddlers, for 2 to 5-year-olds. Music is always important on the projects. And this one gets us down to $2,378,000. Within those numbers, and we're gonna pass out the numbers, we also have a 10% contingency built in. That's a big number for a project like this. Usually we wouldn't have a couple $100 in contingency. I left it there for an open discussion, whether you want that much contingency or maybe we do half of that and bring the overall cost down a little bit there. And then our third option would be combining all into one spot. So you still have your 5 to 12 structure. Most of your spinning activities here, we've put a 2 to 5 playhouse up top there. A little garden sensory wall, and then the tot seat along with musical activities. So all combined into one spot. And then we are at $2,086,000 with that. And my team, I hope you know, we have tried so hard to figure out how to get the cost down with leaving play value in there. Obviously, the big, beautiful park is what we think this park, I mean, it'd be wonderful at a big city park. We also understand that's a really big budget number. So all of those designs, depending on where you want to land on that budget, does give great play value.
Just because it's maybe not immediately obvious to at least to me, square footage wise, if you want to even call it that, I don't even know necessarily what the best way to measure these are. How would like say the bottom, the cheapest option here compare size wise to like Wildwood Park there, which just, you know, down the road here a little bit?
Let's see, which one is Wildwood Park?
It's off of 100.
Oh, Community Park.
Community Park, I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm gonna think about that really fast and check my numbers on here. Do you
I'm
know-
only doing that as a comparison. I'm just
It's
trying to think because
it is a great comparison.
I mean, my input would be, I don't think there's enough difference between the most expensive and the middle option. I think we would go with the first option, but there's a fairly large, you know, difference between the first and the third options and,
Mhm. Yeah,
Well, there's probably some tweaks, but it's 400K delta roughly, and you're losing a lot.
Yeah, you're
And
losing a
so
lot.
your square footage question is appropriate because my questions were gonna be like, I guess the green is just some sort of rubberized surface.
Surface,
yeah.
And so that seems pretty darn big, and I'm sure it's expensive because you have to, you know, pave underneath.
Yeah.
Or do some prep work
aggregate underneath for this one.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, aggregate underneath instead of concrete.
Yeah, so it seems to me that if you can give us three options that are within 400K of one another.
Mhm.
Most of it is going to the the unseen infrastructure,
Yeah.
right? So
You're
if we can shrink
100%
that, like
right.
Chris is saying, maybe
Yes.
we can save significant money and still get the play equipment that we want by having grass in the periphery. And I know that doesn't address the needs of some kids that might have trouble, maneuvering and so on and so forth. But maybe we can be creative with that as opposed to be creative with reducing the number and the type of play structure. Is that possible?
Well, the trouble with grass, actual grass, if you haven't ever spent any time on a playground, within a matter of months, that grass would be depleted and you'd be down to dirt without
Well, I don't
all
know.
the
I
kids
mean,
running around.
we don't know that for sure until we figure out what the
I'm gonna go to
traffic
an
patterns are for the kids and so on and so forth. So I'm just suggesting maybe we can kind of look at, like, that's
I mean, that
wide
looks really
open
big.
there.
It,
It looks really big to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Kind of spread out, yeah.
Yeah, and I like that, but obviously it comes with a cost.
13,000 square feet of surfacing within this.
Okay.
And community, I would guess, and it is a guess, would.
And I'm just
be-
talking the playground, not
No,
like the.
I know you are,
Okay.
but I would guess more 9,000 square feet. Do you have any idea how big community is?
Somewhere between 9 and 10,000 square
Yeah.
feet, as I recall.
And you're
Yeah,
saying this is
so-
13,000?
And this is 13,000, a little over 13.
It's significant.
Yeah.
It is, but the picture, I also have to tell you, like what you're saying about grass. Our designers are really good at making it look like the equipment's not as close together as it is, but for budget savings, we have safety zones around everything and equipment can not be any closer than that, and that's what we have done here. So there's no extra, we can't use
Consolidation.
grass for safety zones. And I'll go back and triple check, but they always know when they're working with us, make
Oh.
sure.
Councilmember Ottenberg?
Two questions. One is for the three options that you have presented, and thank you very much for your presentation. Do all three options include what I will call the quiet area for those children that are autistic?
Yes, they certainly do. Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And I guess I would tend to agree with Councilmember Dodwell with the concern of using, regular grass. I think some type of a surface covering would be better, even if it's going to add to the cost of the project. I see this as a premier destination within the city, and I think if we're going to do it, we want to do it right.
Councilmember McCutcheon, do you have your hand raised?
I did. I agree with Councilmember Ottenberg and Councilmember Dodwell. I think the surface is extremely important, especially for safety for the children. And grass is nice, and I think you can find places where you might be able to utilize grass, but I think the underlayment is extremely important, especially, for all kids. But especially in this instance, I think anything we can do to improve safety, we should do it, even if the cost is there.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mabry?
Yeah, thank you. Perfect opportunity to express my ignorance. I did not see or did not know to look for an MSD approved, I guess, with full drains, accessible bathroom. Is this proposed MSD fully plumbed accessible bathroom so far away from what other bath facilities there might be in the Village Green Park that we need a second accessible bathroom, or am I way off kilter?
Well, I don't know if is there another one in, I thought you addressed that and then,
Councilmember Mabry, there is a plan for a restroom facility that would be constructed in conjunction with the band shell. So if you remember the phase 1 plan, the band shell area and restrooms are right next to the existing parking lot of City Hall. Phase 1 does not include it. And so the question becomes timing. Do we build the band shell and restroom, not do it here? That adds additional cost. So the thought is we did phase 1, phase 2 can't stand alone without a restroom. We can't have that many children, parents and caregivers there without a restroom facility nearby.
Anniversary park.
So it really becomes an issue of timing. Do we do the band shell in conjunction with the restroom, or do we do a standalone restroom in conjunction with playground?
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, I think you folks understood what I was getting at. We're taking a lot of the, what I would call the playground equipment off the table, but it's not reducing the cost. And so that tells me that a lot of this is again, hidden, unseen infrastructure, right? And so I'm not suggesting that kids have to play in the grass, and because we all remember the swing sets from our youth, there's a pit this big that's a muddy hole.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that. What I'm trying to do is start the larger discussion of how we could maybe skinny back on the infrastructure prep work, paving, the whatever the underlayment is and whatever the padded surfaces are and so forth, and maybe get what we want in terms of the playground equipment, and maybe somehow reduce the square footage or reduce the grading or reduce, drive out costs that people won't that are not apparent in the finished result.
Non-playable areas.
I got you one
Yeah,
second,
yeah, yeah.
Councilmember Donald. Councilmember Mabry, did you still have your hand up or were you good on your last question?
I did, yes, just to follow up a train of thought. I heard the price of two of the proposals. I don't know what the base proposal would be. I heard a 2.5, a 2.3, and I don't know what the base bid is. But it sounds like this self-sufficient, child-only, accessible MSD spec bathroom was a later development of a growth of thought. Is there any way to know what the dollar plug-in or the percentage this adds to make the project either a 2.5 or a 2.3 or something slightly less? Has that been weighed, that we get more aggressive with the schedule of timing for the other bathroom that's farther away as a cost benefit study? And that's really all. We can't solve that, and we can't even discuss the permutations of all of that, but just coming in lately, causing problems.
The restroom cost, so it's a two room for family restroom, right? So people can go in there and it's $225 just for the restroom, and then all of the installation was another $50, but then there's broken out sanitary sewer lines and different things like that. We'd have to total the entire cost, but at least a $275 without going into the sewer lines and everything else that goes into it.
Okay.
So that's a
Perfect.
deal. That's
Councilmember,
another 10%.
Councilmember Dodwell?
I just had a question based upon the size of this. Are we required to have this much space filled in? And then where is the tower that we'll eventually put in here going to sit in relationship to this portion? Because I see the restroom is number 11 on the first diagram. And as I recall, our original design, I just don't know if do we have any space west of the red or the dotted line here?
Yes, ma'am.
We do? Okay, okay.
Generally speaking, houses tend to kind of line up the access.
Yeah,
Was over in this western portion. Now, certainly that could shift a little where we have space, or if these are grand trees or mature trees, we can work where they are. But yeah,
Okay.
I think there's ample space.
I just was trying to figure out how does that eventually get in there, number one. And number two, how do we come up with using this much space for the playground? Is it required to provide this much space?
It's not required. We can you saw us scale down in the 3 different levels. So we can certainly scale down to even that bottom level, right? That was a smaller design.
Okay,
Well, I thought that was smaller with fewer things for the kids to play on, not smaller as space wise.
It still is smaller space wise, actually.
Okay,
Oh, I-
okay.
So the whole,
I didn't-
let's see, the whole 2 to 5 section, like down here, it eliminates that space down there. And then you still have the 5 to 12 section up there.
Okay,
We combined a little bit, squished into, we got rid of probably this and something else, and then put in a little playhouse and a few things for smaller kids up there.
but you were saying that for the premier design,
Yeah,
you already had all of the facilities condensed as close as
yes.
they could
as
be,
close
so
as
we
we
couldn't.
can
Yeah.
get that,
Premier would
yeah.
have to include the total space that we were talking about.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
and understand, questions don't mean I'm against anything.
Oh, no,
It's
ask
just
as
I've
many
gotta-
questions as.
I've got to talk to residents and say, why are you doing it this
Sure.
way?
Absolutely.
Councilmember McCutcheon? Do you have your hand up still? I can't.
I just raised it again. So I have a couple questions. I can't remember where I saw this, but is this whole playground in total gonna have a fence around it?
Yes, yep.
And how many swings are they gonna have?
Let's see, that's a great question. I think we're 10 swings by the time in the big project.
And how many, toddler versus preschool versus elementary swings are there?
2 accessible, 2 belt seats. And then, let me go through my pictures again. Generation swing, so one where a parent and a child can sit there, another inclusive swing, and a toddler seat.
And that was a total of what?
That is a good question that I'm just going back to.
She's trying to figure out,
Oh, sorry about that.
I think there's about 7.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay,
I
thank
just
you.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, I'm not making any headway on the square footage idea, so I'll move on from that. My first question is, does the proximity to the civic green seems, it seems pretty, it seems closer than it has to be unless there's a topographical reason or some other reason for it to be crammed up against it, because especially if there's a fence, that means our circle walk has a fence there and you go right into the parking lot. It seems like go right into the playground. It seems like it would make a lot more sense to pull the playground, that drawing, pull it west some number of feet to get it so it's not quite so prominent from the Village Green, which is a concert venue and another venue. Does anybody agree with that? Or
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah, so
I
was
agree.
there a reason why it was stuck there?
There is a reason why. I'm gonna let Chuck tell you why.
Yeah, they didn't want it lower and have the line of sight more hidden. They wanted to be able to have closer access from the parking lot and didn't want it further down the lot so that you were in a screened area. They wanted to be able to open that up. Having it as close to the civic green, it fit when they did their topo, the topographical layout with the components and the walls and the ramps. It fit perfect like this. That doesn't mean that if they needed to take the same footprint and move it over, that they couldn't. What they wanted to do is they wanted to keep as many of the mature trees where they were and we build around them. Rather than if we move it, then we might run the risk of losing some of those very mature trees.
Well, we don't want to do that, but there's where there's a will, there's a way. And so I would ask the planning department to kind of weigh in on this, because I'm convinced that the people who did the planning for this playground, they are experts at what they do, and their focus is making this playground the best it can be our focus has to be on all the other uses for the civic green particularly. And I just think a fence along there might not be exactly what we want to do, even if we have to change the configuration of the playground a little bit. It sounds like there's some agreement. What do you think about that, Joe or Melanie?
Can't speak for Melanie, obviously, but I think there's some flexibility in terms of a shift. I don't know what it does topographically yet, but certainly we'll ask Unlimited Play to
Yeah.
explore that.
Yeah, I think the topography was the main reason that site was chosen, because we
Would that
use,
be a gated entrance into?
we don't usually gate the entrance, we just fence around it with 1-2 entryways max.
I could see more of like an
With what?
archway there.
1 or 2 entryways max,
I
sorry.
could see more of like an archway with a little path leading to the playground, and it's not like I'm trying to put kids out of sight. Kids playing is not
Mhm.
an unsightly thing to most Wildwood residents, but I'm just trying to maximize the flexibility of the civic green. But I also had another, so if you guys are gonna explore that, that's a great thing. But
Okay.
my other observation was the contingency,
Yeah.
250 grand. I kind of think if we can get confidence in the numbers, the final numbers that you provide.
Yeah.
We maybe might want to skinny back on the contingency and just do supplementals unless that's a lot more work for the department, because, that gives us the opportunity to make the decision
Mhm.
sort of on a piecemeal basis. Hey, these lights are gonna cost 150K more than we thought, but they're better lights or just whatever. We make those decisions all the time, and I feel okay with it as long as it's not unduly burdensome for staff. I think we could skinny back on the contingency. What do you think, Mr. Director?
Well, certainly the contingency is always a critical component and it does provide a little flexibility.
Yeah, you do that. You always put a contingency, but do you put 10%?
But I would say we could reduce it no less than 5%.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Okay, Yeah. 5%.
Councilmember Preston?
Just going, I mean, maybe two things, Joe. Looking at where this, like, the top line on this project, if we're floating around 2.6, is that a number we can entertain?
That's a very good question. So with the permission of Unlimited Play and the rest of the committee. So remember, we have a city charter. In the city charter, it speaks to no project, single project, which in the case of parks is the combination of different phases can exceed $3.5 million. The key language in the charter component is that it's city funds. So right now with the phase 1 of Village Green, we're approximately 2.2 million, but almost 600,000 of that is grant money that comes from another source than the city. So we're at 1.6 million roughly. Even with the premier design at 2.6 million, we've already applied for the grant for this phase, the playground. So that would put us at 2 million. And so we're right in that number area. So 2 million plus 1.6 gets us about 3.6 million. And the charter does contain an inflationary component, meaning as inflation rises, that 3.5 million can rise in a coordinated manner. So I think we can do it charter-wise. The question becomes more from a strategic planning component.
Afford it.
Do
Budget,
you
can
all
we
want to
afford
do
it?
that?
Right.
Because if we do that, then really future phases in Village Green will need to go to the voters. So for all intents and purposes, I would say to you, look at it from the perspective, this may be the final phase for a while in Village Green, but it certainly is a worthwhile phase. And we'll do something that I think few of us ever envisioned in the first 29 years of the city.
Are you saying the bandstand, whatever the shell, that would be a further phase that would have to go back to the voters? There's no way around that? Is there like a?
That's a total with all phases.
But it probably doesn't matter.
The walkway and the civic green area would be completed so that we could still set up what we currently set up for concerts
Yes.
in the park and have people sitting in the civic green area. Because there would be grass, there would be a walkway, we just wouldn't have the stage already in place.
Correct.
Okay.
We would minus that.
Hold on one second. I got Councilmember McCutcheon. Is your hand been up?
No, I'm sorry. I thought I put it down.
Who is that? Who you?
Oh, I mean, I think that's all great information, Joe, and I mean, like, I think probably worth noting that I don't think it matters, I mean, quite honestly, if we go with the bottom line option or the top line option here, I mean, there's not enough money there to
It's
take
not
up.
enough
Yeah, I
difference.
mean, there's not enough funds there left to go into a further phase anyways. So,
Good point.
I mean, I guess my input would be maybe push this as much as possible because we're gonna have to do it anyways at some point,
Mhm.
and I don't know, I there's not that big of a discrepancy there to say, let's kind of, save a few bucks on this for what's that really going to accomplish in the end?
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, and we have to figure out as a group, how to make this, the bandstand happen. And there's some cost justifications. We have to rent this for this amount for this cost. And it takes assembly of the stage every time we want to use it. And we use it all the dang time. And here's how much it costs us over 5 years or something like that. And I can go into something that says, hey, voters, what do you think about that? And we can also consider using some of our surplus, because we've been talking about ways to more usefully employ the surplus. I mean, I
I
don't
was
wanna-
gonna say,
I don't
this
wanna
gets into
spend-
this gets into a budget discussion that I think maybe we should hold off.
Well, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not.
I was gonna say the same thing, is the fact that, we've been talking about this for years now related to the master plan and the significant reserve that the city has, and taking a look at, and that's a budgetary, I agree to look and see. I think most people agree that our reserve is far in excess of what it needs to be, and that we do have some wiggle room there. And so I think a lot of times when we look at some of these different ways that we could spend the surplus or invest additional assets, people have different passions in mind, like watershed or something else, but I think a lot of times the gray area becomes where, oh, well, this is only, certain residents of the city are benefiting from this versus others, right? Where I think the Village Green is kind of an all-inclusive focal point center of the city that's being designed for everyone in the city to be able to be used, and kind of the highlight of Wildwood. So if we were gonna leverage surplus funds or have that conversation from a budgetary standpoint, I agree with Councilmember Rambo. I think it's a very worthwhile conversation to have for something like this, more so than anything else. And I know there would probably be some that would disagree with that, but I think it is. And at the same time, to Councilmember Ottenberg's point, if we're gonna do it, you're talking 2.5 or 2.1, it would, and then with the contingency, I would say if you're gonna do it right and make it so it's gonna last, and so the most amount of people are gonna benefit from it for the longest, versus trying to skinny it up a little bit to where you see a significant reduction in the assets for a minimal reduction in the cost, right? So
The infrastructure.
if you're having to build out that infrastructure anyway, so that's just my 2 cents on it, as far as, but yeah, I mean, it's something that, and I guess with what we're looking at with Village Green, we're trying to do this right, and we're trying to do it in a big way, and it's not gonna all happen overnight. So to Councilmember Preston's point, I think it's a foregone conclusion that we're gonna have to go to the voters at some point.
Yeah, and the bandstand, we can offset the
Yeah,
cost
so-
of the temporary stage.
I think if we try to cut corners or be too conservative on the front end for the worry of, we're always conservative and trying to cut costs and make sure we're being good with the money, but if we try to be too aggressive with it for the purpose of not wanting to go to the voters or needing to go to the voters, I think we're just shooting ourselves in the foot, because I think we're gonna go to the voters at some point, whether it's gonna be next year or in 2 years or whatever, phase 2 or 3 or 4, whatever that is. So I think we just need to get that, under our hats right now, that at some phase of this project, we're going to the voters to get more approval. So with that being said, that shouldn't be a part of the thought process of what we do in phase 1 or phase 2, because I think each phase as we do it, we need to make sure we're doing it of what's gonna benefit the city long-term in the best way. Councilmember Preston?
I think to your point, I think people will be more willing to vote in favor of additional funds too, when they see that it was done right.
Yeah,
Let's say we, go half killed on this thing and it's, kind of disappointing. It's like, well, you spent all that money and this is what we got. I think if this thing's, fully meets expectations, I don't think that people have a problem with that.
And there's nothing that. I think when you build something like this, yeah, you wanna make it grand and people like it, so if they come in and it's like, the kids aren't like going crazy over it, it's it's not gonna be inspiring, right?
I think-
Councilmember Dowdell?
Having the ability to have our concerts in an appropriate place to begin with is a number one plus on the way we've got this civic green designed. And then we see at all of our concerts, kids running around and playing, and then they come back up and start dancing with the band. This gives us the flexibility for parents to have their kids playing in a playground while they're here for those kinds of events. And we thought long and hard about the city park, and nobody's gonna come and would, and that thing's packed all the
Yeah.
time.
Councilmember McCutcheon?
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. So, are there certain pieces of equipment, play equipment that could be taken out that wouldn't be too diminishing to cover the bandstand? Because I hear constantly about needing a bandstand. And believe me, I'm the advocate party girl for, playgrounds. You all know that. That's always really important to me. But I know residents are really looking forward also to a bandstand. So is there some way we could, I don't know, do a little bit of trade-off and still make the park, a grand park, but also get that bandstand in?
Thank you. Well, Ms. McCutcheon, there's a couple of components I'd like to address. First of all, if we proceed forward as designed with phase 2, which includes the restroom, the bandstand becomes less expensive immediately because we can share the facility and work from there. And when we have our larger events, we use portable restrooms like we do now. But for day in and day out use, I think the restroom that's been selected by Unlimited Play will probably meet our needs for those purposes. So that's first. The bandstand gets a little less expensive and a little more affordable. I think also when Ms. McCabe first presented to the committee, she mentioned that these facilities end up drawing a lot of sponsorships and donations, things along those lines. We've already had one meeting with the gentleman that works with Unlimited Play about tapping into the philanthropic community here in St. Louis area, which they've been very successful with. So I'm hopeful, maybe too optimistic, that we can even reduce the cost a little more just by maybe potentially offering some naming rights, things like that for people that want to participate. And obviously we want to recognize.
I was just gonna bring that up. That's the reason I had my hand up is no, that's okay. That's something that we have not done as a city very effectively. And we have individuals who have at least asked me, what can I donate to? Is there some place I can donate some of my funds to help the city? And so if we could look at individual costs for some of the playground equipment or some of the different components and come up with a game plan where we could publish that to the citizens and say, would you be willing to help offset the cost or?
It's what we specialize in. So I would,
Good, you can put that together.
so I wanted to come with, we typically create a catalog and it would have the beautiful rendering on the front cover, a vision statement of why you want to do this. And then we break down your design into individual pieces to be sponsored. I would have come tonight with that, but I wasn't sure which way you guys are going. But if you say, we want the big overall design, then my team goes back and we start making your marketing materials to find the donors to do that. We'll play a big role in facilitating that.
What would you think that just from a high level would be with your donors and your sponsorships that you've done in the past would be an expected? So if we're talking 2.5 million, top end. With a 250,000 contingency, but I'm saying, what would you say would be a realistic amount to be able to try to get that reduced by
With donations. you mean?
donations and sponsorship
Wait,
opportunities?
Such a wild card. I would say normally I'd say at least a couple $100,000. Depends on how long you wanna spend fundraising too, though. So what connections you have and how long we spend.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, the zoo and the botanical garden both have like a kiosk and you can sponsor like a particular bird, a flamingo or something like that, and it'll put your name in the type of bird and you go in and look at it and you can renew it every year and so on and so forth. And people would eat that up around here. It's kind of like, it's a cooler thing than the bricks. And it's, you know, would be a maintenance problem for us maybe, but it would, you know, there's plenty of ways to do that. But my question was gonna be, I don't want you to forget about thinking of moving the
Moving
thing.
it, checking
Yeah,
out topography.
and I believe a nice pathway that has an arch that says, you know, Deer Bergs Park or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's a valuable, that's a valuable,
Selling there.
yeah, advertising thing. But the other question that came up immediately when I looked at your documentation a few days ago is kind of silly, but the swings have
Arch.
sort of it's an arch, but it's not a catenary curve, which is our arch. And I'm wondering if these are custom designed playground equipment, if we could incorporate the St. Louis arch into the arches that we're putting into the park. I just think that would be a really cool thing, and you know, it would sort of be a regional thing, but I think people would like it, and if it's no more expensive to do it that way, could we, is that a
It's a
possibility?
great question. So those swings are not actually custom, the ones you're talking
Oh,
about.
okay, just,
So I could take it back to the team and they're pretty good at doing anything I ask, but it will up our budget then. So, but I'm more than willing to check it out.
Just cancel yourself
We
out.
would like
Just cancel yourself out.
You got Deerberg's
Sponsor
Park
it.
and then you raise the price.
Yeah.
well, I would like to see that menu, cause I
Okay.
would consider, you know, kicking in a few
Yeah,
bucks
I
for
would
something
too.
myself, you know, so.
Deb, did you?
Meaning-
Oh, go ahead.
Did you mean, please check out the swings becoming the arch?
I'm
or-
saying, check out, you know, if you can add, I don't wanna add costs to this, I wanna subtract costs from this, but I thought those were custom pieces of equipment, and it's not, it's just a,
Yes.
it's a rounded top, and I
Mhm.
thought, well, splay it out and
Yeah.
make a catenary out of it, or a
Make it
parabola,
more-
or whatever.
yeah,
we
A
want.
lot of pieces are custom on your structure, but
Uh-huh.
not the swings, so.
All right, well,
Yeah.
never mind.
Deb, do you still have your hand up or were you
No, I re-put my hand up.
I can't tell if it's that far over.
I'm sorry, I know, I have
No,
trouble.
it's not your fault. That's just blocking out. I can't see
I'm
it.
sorry. I'm curious as to why there isn't gonna be a gate to the fence. Why are there just gonna be two openings?
Yeah, so if you think through, like my son that used an electric wheelchair was never capable of opening a gate by himself, and lots of kids have that situation. We do add gates though, when a city feels like we're in a more dangerous area where kids, even if they run out the two openings, are quickly going to be in danger. We add gates with a pool lock top to it, so you guys could decide. For me, it's been an accessibility issue. Somebody would always have to be there to let somebody using a wheelchair particularly, or who did not have the arm strength to do that, to get in the gate.
Got it.
We actually have an inclusion for 3 gates.
Where are
So-
those gates placed? Can you show us or point
We
them out?
can't show you because we didn't know until right this minute that they're in there. Sorry about that.
No,
Yeah.
there's a line item on there it's there, if you want gates, we can put them in there. If you don't want them, we can take that $4,500 out.
The only reason I said the word gates was I was, I guess, meaning entrance into the space.
Yeah.
So I would prefer there not be a gate on any of these spaces, especially if you're dealing
Yeah,
with
just walk in.
handicapped
Yeah,
individuals that are
that-
trying to get through with their equipment.
Yeah, it becomes a big issue.
So I guess, I mean, it's like, oh, go ahead, Deb.
Yeah, so I have one other question. So, The other thing you hear a lot about is everybody's excited about the splash pad. So I didn't see the splash pad within this design. Is there one?
It is not within the design, so I do have just a small one I can show you that comes in at about 260 as an alternative. And it's do you want runoff or recirculating? Recirculating adds cost to that.
I
So
just
again,
need to be able to answer my constituents' questions because I'm gonna get asked that, where's the splash pad?
so that's add addition, you know, if you want to. We can always do misters, a mister, you know, we've done those, if you wanna add that in to begin with and think about a splash pad later.
Would a splash pad be in addition to what you've already presented,
It
or would it
would
take
be.
the space of part of it?
It'd be a separate
It would
space.
be in addition to, yeah. Yeah,
I think that's gonna have to go into phase.
That's
Yeah.
okay, that's gonna break the budget.
Councilmember Rambo?
Yeah, I thought we were bagging the tower because it was just gonna look down on roofs of latitude 38 north. Is that, am I all wet on that, or?
No.
Cause the tower idea didn't seem like it was workable, but then we mentioned the tower again, so.
It's still part, the tower is still part of the master plan that was developed, obviously, a few years back. But as we keep incrementally adding different things and cost increases have occurred, it's become one of the last phases of the project. And so I wouldn't say it's necessarily off the table until city council says it is, but it's certainly not one of the.
Its
premier
height would
phases.
be over the latitude.
How tall was it gonna be?
It was about 3 stories, as I recall.
Okay, so if you're 30 feet up and the places are a story plus the roof adds another story, you're not up by much. And it just doesn't feel like it would be much of an amenity to me, so.
I have more practical concerns about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Human
the uses,
nature
it would be.
The designer and the department didn't see necessarily eye to eye on it because make it accessible, it has to have an elevator.
Yes, it
and that
does.
makes it cost. And then I just see it as, you know, they built a garage down by the Metrolink station in Brentwood, and that's where people go to jump off. And so it's like, I don't know if I want to create something that.
I do not support that tower, but if we do get an elevator, if we
Somebody
could buy
did it
the,
on the.
if we could
first
buy
floor,
the
like,
same
right?
brand of elevator as we put in here, that would be great.
It never works.
How much was that tower?
I don't know, I'd have to look back at the documentation.
260,000?
Oh.
Nice try.
And it's what, 7, 8 years old and cost us mint, so
So I guess
twice what it would be now. Just
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the rest of the committee, I mean, I think there's general support for this project. And it sounds to me that the direction you guys are looking for is which
mhm.
design to go back and look deeper into and make adjustments. It seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, once again, that we're most likely looking more towards the premier design
Yeah.
if we're gonna do this. And so I think, you know, if we wanna look, are we looking for a motion to have them look further into this, or is this just general
Could
direction?
just steal a minute more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Each time. So first of all, I want to emphasize the cost does not include what you see in terms of Main Street. I asked Unlimited Play to show Main Street, just so we could get an understanding of accessibility from the vehicle to the playground area. That's a whole separate project. That's a public works project, so it doesn't count toward Village Green. The only thing I saw that I have a question about is shade. And I didn't necessarily see any shade structures represented in the overall plan, so I just asked Unlimited Play. Are there, and I'm just missing them, or?
Yeah, so you and I talked about maybe a concrete section with benches and shade. That comes in at about 55,000, so it's just where to place that. Within that, we also talked about there's double spinners on there, a few different double things. So I think if we take out one of those doubles and come in with the concrete pad, benches and shade, we can equal out on that and not lose play value and add in.
But it looked to me in the design that
Shade.
there was a decent amount of trees.
Yeah.
There are a lot
Within the
of,
design
Yeah.
already, so I mean,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a significant amount of shade, cause there's a lot of those grand trees in there there.
One of the reasons for this location, as we just kind of set the footprint in different areas. In other areas, it was going to require much more cost with shade structures. By moving it up here, we're gonna use the shade from the existing natural canopies of the trees. And so that was one of the few of the reasons, there was 3 or 4 of them, why it went up here. But that was a real design factor when I was talking with the landscape architect, that they wanted to use the tree canopies as aesthetic and as shade. So it reduces the demand of how much of the shade structures we'd have to install if we went down that path.
Aren't there some big trees further west though? Yeah, I mean, we've trees we got, and as long as we're not talking about dropping the elevation or raising the elevation by 6 or 10 feet surrounding a grand tree or two, we have an arborist who can ensure that those trees remain healthy, with moderate levels of contouring around it. And so I'm not as concerned as you are about the trees, and I'm always concerned about trees. I think it makes the design more flexible if we try to move the playground if we can.
So Director Vunish, then, for the purposes of this, are we just giving them direction to say, we like the Premier design, go back and see if we can move it a little further west perhaps, what that looks like, or potentially take the gate, the fence away, or push it back away like Councilman Bramlett brought up, and what, look at some of the other suggestions that we've had, or do we need a motion to do that, or is it just more direction?
I think a motion would be appropriate, given the scale of the project we're talking about. My notes from the discussion that's been held amongst the committee members is primarily the shift. Everything else seemed appropriate, and you identified it as something you would support.
So I would make that
Make the
motion,
motion.
and I also would like to ensure that we include the concerns about maybe the tower no longer belongs in this plan as appropriate, because I don't want to lose sight of that, because we might tend to do that, and it's a $250,000 project that I don't think.
Well,
most
no, I
people
don't
would
think we need to
support.
put it in right
Yeah.
now. I'm just
Years
saying.
down the road, I mean,
Yeah.
What's that?
I think that's years down the road at least.
Yeah, that-
Yeah.
If ever, I'd rather.
We're just giving
Separate.
them direction on how to adjust the
Yeah, I just-
design. What they're doing, so you're making a motion to go with the Premier design and make the landscape architects look and see if we can push it back west a little bit. Were there any other?
Figure out what
adjustments
splash
or-
pad's gonna go. Right? No, I mean, if that's
In the
that's
future.
part of our thing. Oh, it's a future deal?
there would be an option, and I can't even guarantee this at all. But since we're putting together a fundraising catalog anyways, if you are okay with the price point that Premier wants at, part of that fundraising catalog can say splash pad next phase, unless someone wants to sponsor it to go in now.
We have to know where it is though, and
I
I'm
agree
just
with that.
suggesting, yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying that could be an option to get it in sooner, but that money they may have given to something else on the playground
So
and
can they,
the splash
is it
pad.
possible then for you guys to do what we're asking you to do with the Premier design that you already have, the playground, and then perhaps make a phase 2 design, or call it a phase 2 with the splash pad and locate it
Absolutely.
so that with a price point that we could then, you know, because that's something that we could also take back to council regarding the contingency. If we remove some of that, we get some sponsorships and donations, it could offset the difference on the splash pad too. So if you could do that, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, and can we also look at trying to find a way we can actually get the bandstand?
Not yet.
If there's some way we could possibly do that.
Right now, we're just having unlimited play work on their specific design. Once we have that back and have a design we like, then we can all, from a budgetary person, because that's a city, that doesn't have anything to do with them.
Yeah, it's budget time coming up, right?
But I understand that, but if we spend X amount of dollars on this project, then we have no dollars for the bandstand, so I think
No.
we need to at least consider at this
You're
point.
right, but I'm saying that's a city budgetary conversation to decide how we want to spend our funds. What we're asking the limited play right now is just to go back and make adjustments to the plan they've submitted to us to consider, to fine tune it.
Guess the commitment I can make to the committee, Ms. McCutcheon, is I'll get back with Human Nature, advise them that we'll probably change the design of the bandstand minus the restrooms now, and ask them to see what that cost would be. And maybe we do that as a single project if we're successful with the sponsorships and reducing the cost. And then we may be able to do everything at once.
I think the offsetting costs of the rental stage
Yep.
and stuff are really gonna be important. Do you know where the portable restrooms are gonna go
Things on the
for
design.
big events? Have we decided that?
We'll figure that out later.
Well, I would like to know if we've thought about it at all.
On this
because
design?
No, on phase one.
No.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Phase one.
you're gonna be right. I mean, the only places I can see are quite prominent, like along Main or along between
Yeah.
City Hall and.
Obviously, in phase one, we have the Essen Log Campbell reassembly, and then we have the new Mayor's Grove. The idea would be to kind of situate them more over in this southwest edge.
Oh, okay, sure. So out of the way a little bit, kind of like we do with Celebrate Wildwood. They're
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that's
But
a great,
still clearly accessible and visible.
and it's a field, so there's not, yeah, okay, great.
Works fine.
Okay, Councilmember Dowdell?
I have one last question, hopefully. If we're looking at the overall diagram with your components in it, and we're over here by number 8 and the sidewalk. There you go. And the black line that you see there along the sidewalk, that's where you were talking about putting the fencing, correct?
Correct.
And the reason that you were putting fencing there was because it's gonna drop real quickly, or it's not?
No, because one of the calls we get most consistently are from families that have kids with autism that run. And so it's become one of our standards to make sure those families feel safe to come out.
Okay, so explain to us where all the fencing is going to be. Is it gonna be around the entire?
It's around the entire thing typically, and then
Okay.
those families have talked to us about only 2 entryways to the playground, so they could watch those 2. Yours is a very large site, and I need to understand everything that will come in phases to really analyze where those should be, and
Okay,
maybe more than 2 because
So then you said you're putting fencing in, but then the entrance is gonna be open?
it is. So usually
Okay.
we do, we can do, it's not in the budget right now, but an entry, a grand archway into it.
Okay,
Right.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to understand how the fencing was
Very-
working. I'm sorry, you guys.
No, you're good. So-
Do I have to vote on my?
Yeah, so we gotta take the
Sorry.
vote while Councilmember Rambo is still
Yeah,
here,
uh-huh.
because we lost the other 2.
Oh, yeah.
So Scott texted me. So, okay, so we got a motion on the floor. The second, who seconded? Councilmember Preston seconded for them to take the Premier design and go back and see about pushing it back west and look at some of those other small details we discussed, as well as getting a bid on a phase 2 splash pad cost and all that fun stuff. And so with that being said, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none? All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, motion passes. So we look forward to seeing the updated design.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you for your
guys. Thank
time.
you.
See ya.
This looks great. I'm so excited about it. And.
For your
I can't
input.
Wait to see what
Yeah.
what's come back.
All right, now,
Yeah.
all right, see you, Rob. All right, now we're without quorum. We don't really have anything else on the agenda that needs to be voted on, right?
I was going to do a presentation on the master plan update and seek some direction. committee. As under our timeline, we have to get started in the next couple of months. So,
So can we,
thank you.
so is there anything you needed us to vote on, or can we do the presentation and then discuss it and give you our feedback, or?
That would be preferable. I'd hate to leave without a little direction.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we just don't have to have an official motion. So, all right, so then we're done with that. So we're back to the master plan update under planning matters, right?
Yep.
Director Vunich?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
And
you.
then we'll be able to take a vote to adjourn though, right?
Yes. We're stuck here forever.
We're stuck here.
We're still sitting here in October. It's the longest meeting that accomplished nothing.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Surprisingly, from the department's perspective, we are at the conclusion of almost a 10-year timeframe on our last update of the master plan. The original master plan was adopted in February 1996, and subsequently in 2006 and 2016, we've completed updates in February. And so the goal again would be to complete the update by February 2026. So backing out the dates, which is the responsibility of the department to get you an accurate timeframe, the feeling is if the February 2026 deadline is our goal, and our approval process that is required under our code as well as charter, we would need to basically have a completed master plan sometime around September of 2025, or approximately 1 year away. Taking that into account, we use the same format that we've employed in the past, which is a grouping of citizen volunteers, planning and zoning commission members, city council liaisons, and representatives from the community, both the business and the service sides. The process takes a bit of time, and we usually only meet once a month because we're dependent on volunteers. So from that perspective, we really have about 10 months to pull it all together. And so tonight, the department was first just to identify the time frame, and then talk to the committee about, do you want to do a citizens group to kind of oversee the process, or is there a different approach you'd like us as the department to explore? In each instance, except the first, for the most part, we've used citizen-based feedback to kind of guide the development of the plan, to accept public comment, and ultimately endorse a draft to the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately City Council. In 2016, we had 23 individuals participate. Let me tell you, we filled this room up and we had to expand this square that you're sitting at to make that work. But again, the number is entirely in your purview if we choose to proceed with a citizens-based committee. And if not, then certainly we'll explore other options. Tonight, I was hoping to get some feedback on the process, if we'd like to replicate what we did in 2016 or not. And then just a couple of other items. I would also like to engage a facilitator if we do a citizen-based group or committee. We used facilitators in the last 2 updates, and it works very well. They're detached, they keep the meeting moving forward, and certainly are able to kind of, particularly in some instances, push the process. If there's a particular area where we kind of settle on and people want to argue at length, and for the most part has allowed us to meet the timeframes. Also, I do want to potentially re-engage Jonathan Barnett, the original author of the master plan, just to kind of get a feel for where he thinks trends are going outside Wildwood that would impact our master plan development. Jonathan Barnett is a internationally renowned planning professional. He was last at the University of Pennsylvania in their urban design department. So I think just having him do a simple review and just identify things that you need to think about this or you're not thinking about that, I think would be very beneficial regardless of how we do the update. So again, to summarize, do you want to do a citizen-based approach? If so, is there any number of representatives you think is most appropriate? Department would like to have a facilitator assist in the meetings and then have Jonathan Barnett do a review of the current document and provide any input before we get started.
Okay, I had one question, then I got you, Councilmember McCutcheon. So the last two iterations of the master plan update, were they both done with the same template? And was that with 23 people?
The 2006 update had the lesser number. We were somewhere, I think, around 15, an odd number in the event of a close vote. The last update in 2016, there were concerns that we weren't doing a broad enough base to accommodate all input. So we brought in 8 residents, 8 planning and zoning commission members, 2 at-large residents. So even there, we were up to 18. And then we filled out the remaining 5 spots with 2 council liaisons, and then others from the community.
Do you feel that the 15 or the 23 was better?
Logistically, 23 was difficult because we had to add tables to this room. We basically were packed in here because it's just a large group when you put in staff, others that have to attend the meeting as well. Certainly, we made it work. A lesser number might be better, just from the perspective of managing the process. But again, if there's a feeling that we're trying to preclude input, I can guarantee you we'll be glad to take as many as you want. But I will also say we do several citywide mailings as part of this process. First, to just let people know what we're getting started. Any thoughts on the immediate term? We also do one for land use. It's because that's always kind of a key issue amongst many of our property owners. And then we do one as we approach the public input process at the conclusion.
That's what, yeah. Councilmember McCutcheon?
Yeah, having participated in 2 master plan updates, I think Mr. Vunich put forth a very positive approach, and I would be willing to, if need be, make the motion that we follow the department's recommendation. The room did get a little crowded, but everybody comes with a different perspective. I think the way that the participants were picked gave us a good overall balance of representation for the city. It did get a little crowded, but I mean, you know, I don't know if we could maybe move into the council chambers if they're available or whatever. I think we did that at one point. But I know we can't vote on it because I don't know what you're wanting, Joe. But I definitely agree with Mr. Vunich. I think that was a great way to do it.
Yeah, I think the process, to me, I don't see why it makes sense to reinvent the wheel if we've done it twice and it's worked out pretty well. I would say, obviously, we can't make a motion and vote on this tonight, but we can more or less agree on the direction and the, you know, that the department is recommending, and then we can just table it for October's meeting and just vote on it at that point. Councilmember Dodwell?
Okay, we've got a representative from each ward, but then you've got 2 at-large resident members. So that brought it up to 10. Was there a reason for those 2 at-large, and how did those get picked?
My recollection is the mayor actually
Had a couple of
reached
folks.
out and contacted them. All were confirmed by the city council,
Yeah.
but the mayor had that role.
Okay.
I guess your question is, do we need those extra 2 people?
Do we need those extra 2 people, number 1, and number 2, do we need all 8 members of planning and zoning? Or do we need representatives from planning and zoning for each of the meetings where you kind of branch off into? I'm just throwing some hypotheticals out here.
Well, a couple of things come to mind immediately. Although we had 23 people, it was very seldom we had full attendance
Yeah,
because we're over a year-long period. And so people would, people be on
In and
vacation,
out.
people have a family thing,
Okay.
So at the end, we did have a couple of meetings where we were chock full and it was great because everybody made fun about it. It's like, oh, we're all here, like that kind of. So in some regards, having more means that we generally had a good discussion because we,
Okay.
regardless of a few absences, we always had a good group.
So yeah, so you would recommend then just
Okay,
going with what you did in 16?
I think so. The other part of it is, from the perspective of the department, the 8 commission members, again, same thing. Not all of them were able to attend. I thought about tonight, maybe mentioning, maybe we take half of the commission, but then when we did it in 2016, it was like, well, I kind of like to sit in on it. So it was hard to make that.
that's fine, that's
So-
fine. I just wanted to throw it out
No,
there.
thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, it sounds like, I don't think this is a very controversial topic, so it sounds like, we're all in agreement that I think the way we did in 2016 makes the most sense to do it again. It worked out pretty well and it gives the most amount of input. And so I guess we can just put it on the agenda for the October meeting and just make it more of a formality. We can let the rest of the people in the committee know that since they weren't here, they don't get a say anyway, and we're just gonna vote the way we decided.
You might put the
Suck it up.
call out, you might put the call out to all the council members, saying, start looking for somebody from your ward.
And the 2 things, thank you. I appreciate that direction and I would like to do that. The other thing, if there's no objection, I'd like to at least reach out to Mr. Barnett and see if he'd be willing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah, I don't anticipate
Yeah.
there's gonna be any like opposition to this
And
process.
then in the interim between now and October, we'll see if we can find a facilitator, give you some credentials for that facilitator so you can say, well, yeah, I think that
We'll
was.
just have to do 2 readings in November to get everything moving
rolling,
forward
yeah.
for you.
Yes, we won't really lose any time.
Yep.
For the most part. Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. That sounds good. So the next item is just the recent development trends. Anybody have any questions related to anything on there? No, and then you can give us the update on the Village Green. Sure. It's an informational thing, right?
Just, as you can see, a lot of the heavy equipment is moved off-site, which is an indicator that the infrastructure, for the most part, for stormwater purposes, is complete. We've got the water line installed. The water pit is on its way. It's been ordered and should be here shortly. So we're getting very close with all the utilities and stormwater management facilities being complete. The issue that still is outstanding and identified in the memorandum is we're still waiting for a cost estimate from Ameren, Missouri design or the conduit and the undergrounding of that section of overhead lines that basically define the two boundaries between City Hall and Village Green. To date, I've been billed, city's been billed $373,000 of the existing $2 million budget for work that's completed. If there are any questions, we'd certainly be glad to answer them. Yesterday, Ryan Gessmeyer was here from Human Nature, did some work out on the site, looking at the mock-up samples of the concrete and the staining associated with it. There's still some work to be done there, so I have to get the concrete subcontractor back out. He also visited Pea Ridge Nursery, found some great stock. And so he's tagged it already for us, and that'll be held. And we're still looking at late October, early November for the installation. So progress there as well. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time.
Right. All good, all right. That's good, progressing along. That takes us to the Wildwood Recreation Programming and Facility Reservations. Anybody have any questions on any of that? No? Okay, no executive session, we couldn't do it anyway. Not ready for action, standard items, and no other items for consideration. Next meeting is Tuesday, October 15th. And with that being said, unless anybody has anything else, I don't. So thank you for your participation. I think we accomplished everything we needed to. We'll just take the formal vote on that one piece the next month and get it all going. So thank you for your participation, and we were able to achieve our objective tonight, I think. So with that being said, I'll take a motion for adjournment. Councilmember Preston, second by Councilor Dodwell. All in favor, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed and any abstentions?
Thanks so much. We.
All right.